500 years ago, he washed ashore the sole survivor of a shipwreck. And upon the skull of the man who killed his dad, he said, "I'm mad, I must eradicate piracy, injustice and cruelty, and all my sons will follow me, so evildoers will believe that this man cannot die."
G'day, this is Expand the Phantom podcast. Our website is chroniclechamber.com and you can subscribe to our podcast via YouTube or through your favourite podcast apps. Do not forget to give us a rating on your podcast app and tell a mate about us. This is episode 240, where we review 2022 in 2 hours, or we at least try. We will go over the tale of the tape, highlighting every comic and merchandise item that has been released around the world in 2022, and then go over our favourites. We have regular contributors, Ankit and Mikael and Duncan, also giving their input as well. Joining us today, we have myself, but also Dan and Steve. How was your festive season, gents?
Well, mine was good, Jim. Got to see... Well, I got to see my brother for the first time since before COVID.
Oh, awesome!
So that was nice. And the rest of my whole, my siblings and their families. Yeah, we all got together up in Mildura. Weather turned it on. It was nice and warm, and it was an excellent get together. And we had a couple of Germans come along as well, which was nice.
No worries. So no family dramas.
No, I'm not worried about drama. It's Christmas time. Too busy for drama.
Good. Dan,
too busy washing dishes.
Yeah, good, Jim, and Merry Happy New Year to everybody who's tuning in for the retrospective of 2022. It's similar to Steve, family, friends, good times, lots of food, too much food, but the highlight was probably having a bit of a digital detox for a week and a half, where I basically put the phone down and walked away. And sorry, I missed out on a bunch of messages from you guys, but it was good to just completely make a break from that world for a bit. So
that's good. All right, so we're going to get straight into it. Like I said, we're going to try and get it under 2 hours. So wish us luck. Basically, what we're going to do first of all is we're going to go. We call it the tale of the tape, which is basically we go over everything that has been released in 2022. So we're going to do that first, and then we're going to go over a handful of items that we have voted as our favourite. So favourite cover for a certain publisher, etc., etc., etc. And then we've also going to go over the results for the Frew survey that has finished. We're going to have a more detailed post along with the draw of the competition a couple of days after this podcast has been run, and that's basically, and that will have, that will kind of go over all of that. So to start us off, we are going to start off with the newspaper stories, which are from KFS, which have been published in the newspapers. Not as many newspapers as normal, but you can also get it on Comics Kingdom. So we had 4 daily stories four stories in the daily era that were published in 2022. So some might have finished in 2021 or might have started in 2021, and some might have only just started and will probably finish next year, but there's been 4 separate stories. And then for the Sunday stories, there has been 2 as well. So it's roughly the same as the last few years. I believe last year was 4 and 2. Excuse me. The year before was actually 4 and 3 Sunday stories. So one of the big differences, though, is, especially with the daily stories, is that they seem to be a lot more connected than before. So we're currently in an arc where I think it's the last 3 stories are all the one story, but where now the stories are like chapters, in a sense. The Sunday story will be a longer one. Wouldn't be surprised if 2023, you may even just get the 1, but it might be 2 as well. So we'll talk about that this time next year.
Okay, moving on from the newspaper stories, we have Frew and what they've been able to put out this year. So, of course, Frew is the Australian publisher of the Phantom. Unless you've been living under a rock, or you're new to the Phantom, you'd know that one. Okay, so this year they have Frew has released 26 regular issues. That's from issue 1909 through to 1934. Out of those issues, there have been 15 Frew created stories. Now, this is up from 12 in 2021, and a huge jump from 7 back in 2020. Now, a few of those stories had multiple parts, but we only include those as one story, not one part per story, if you get what I'm talking about.
Yep.
So, apart from that, we got first time published by Frew and not Frew stories. There's 11 of those, so coming from Fantomen or wherever. Previously published by Frew, there were 28 stories. There were 21 in 2021 and 29 in 2020. So a little bit less than 2020, but a fair bit more than 2021, which is interesting, seeing as there was a heck of a lot more Frew created stories. All up, there were 54 stories in total, which is down from 58 in 2021, 60 in 2020, and 69 in 2019. Now, I'm going to assume that that's also got something to do... Oh, these were just regular ones too. I was about to say something about Giant Size and Phantom's World and that sort of thing. But no, this was just all the regular issues, isn't it, Jam?
Yeah. So regular issues.
Okay. Talking about the extra issues, Giant Size Phantom, they put out 4 issues, which is less than the last few years, and they put out 1 graphic novel.
So that's 4 stories. So there's 1 Phantom story per Giant Size Phantom.
Per Giant Size issue. Yeah.
And that's less purely because of the Scorpius saga.
Ah, right, of course. And we got fewer books than in the past altogether. So 2017 was 36, 2018 was 42, that's the bumper year. 2019, 38, 2020, 34, 2021, 32, and 2021, 32, and 2022 was 31. Now, of course, those numbers can be a little bit scriff because we had Phantom's World and Kid Phantom as well. So seeing those go by the wayside have, of course, affected the number of issues that have come out or number of books that have come out. Dan?
It's interesting though that it is still the least number of books, actual books produced by Frew over the last 7 or 8 years. So an interesting one. But anyway, we can muse on Frew later when we do other Frew related topics and news, I suppose. Jerm has, in his wisdom, decided to give me the Fantomen stories from Sweden because he knows how much I love the Swedish stories. And
when I read the run sheet, I was laughing.
I thought you might be. As soon as I saw the little green color coding on Team Fantomen for me, I was like, okay. So, look, there was 19 regular issues from Fantomen in Sweden this year. They also put out 2 trade paperbacks, as well as 4 replica hardcover books and 1 hardcover collection. What was the collection of, Jim?
That was the Heart of Darkness black and white one.
Of course, yeah. Okay. Oh, black and white. Okay.
Yeah, the Heart of Darkness with the Luca Roberta cover.
Yep. Okay. Not really. I'm sure there's a picture of it on the screen at the moment, so everyone who's watching this on YouTube can see that. Meanwhile, in terms of stories that Fantomen actually produced or published alongside those 20-something total books that they've got there, 9 of them were new true Team Fantomen created stories this year, which is pretty similar numbers than the last couple of years. They actually published 7 new Frew stories, which is it's more than doubled their previous total of Frew stories across 2021 and 2020. So really, it'd be interesting to have a feel for, I suppose, how the Swedes are enjoying responding to those Frew created stories. But great to see that there's that crossover anyway, and that Fantomen are picking up those stories. They also published 11 new newspaper stories, so newspaper stories that they were publishing for the first time. There was 11 of those. That's pretty au fait with what's happened over the last few years as well. Then they also published 12 repeats or reprints which is half of the amount compared to the last couple of years. So 12 this year, only which is half of 24 from last year and 21 the year before. So there you go. So back in 2019, though, they didn't have any reprint stories, so maybe they're finding that balance. So overall, 27 new stories, 12 of them being repeats for 39 total stories in 2022. Let's go to America, Joan.
No worries. So we'll fly over the North Sea. We'll go over to America. So we will touch upon Herms Press, which are based in the USA. So they did one Sunday hardcover annual, which is a bit of the last couple of years they've only been releasing one of those per year. 2 dailies, and then they also had their 2 DC ones as well. So 2022, they've released 5 books or collections altogether. 2021 was 5 as well. 2022 was 8, and then 2019 was 7. Now, that was higher because they were doing the Avon replica books as well. So that's why they were being higher. So a couple of notes: the daily and Sunday series are getting less and less released a year. And then the other interesting question is going to be, what will they do next after the DC series is finished? If I was a betting man, which I'm not because I would lose all my money, and my wife doesn't like me spending money that I do as it is. So yeah, I couldn't afford to be a gambler on top of being
your money away with the PH.
Look, if I was to be, if I was to guess at what they will look at, it would probably be the Marvel series, which I believe it might be a little bit harder for them. But Marvel did the Defenders of the Earth, which 2040, and then also the Aussie miniseries, which was created by Glenn and Dave. So you could get maybe 2, maybe 3 collection books out of that, which could set them up for a year and a half. So that might be the option. Or they might have a go at creating a new comic book series as well. But we will see. Finishing off in America, you have Comics Review, which is a magazine that comes out every 2 months, so bi-monthly. So basically they have Phantom stories, they have Mandrake stories, and other newspaper stories as well in there. Generally, they have 2 to 3 issues of those featuring the Phantom on the cover. This year they only had 2. They had 3 in 2021, and then 2 the year before, and then 3 the year before that. So generally it's about every 50% of their covers feature the Phantom. Stephen.
You're on mute, mate.
Sorry, I'm on mute. And now we're moving over to India, over the subcontinent, where we have 2 publishers. We've got Regal and Shakti. So Regal, 2 years with no issues of the Malayalam series. We just assume that series is cancelled. I had 1 trade paperback, which was the Terror of the Python. 7 regular issues of English series. No regular series between December 21 and July 2022. There were 15 issues in 2021 and there were 9 in 2020. So slightly down on the last couple of years. Well, a lot down on last year and slightly down on 2020. Shakti, they've got 5 issues in 3 different languages. What about the rest of the world?
Do you know what they are at the top of your head, Steve?
The 3 languages?
Malayalam?
Was it the Malayalam? I can't say that word.
Bengali and Hindu and English.
Well, there you go. Thank you. I just went to look in Phantom Wiki very quickly and I couldn't see it there either.
All right. Well, let's go from India to Hungary. And Kokos, I think is the pronunciation. I'm sure is not the pronunciation, but that's what I'm going with. They released 5 issues in Hungary, that publication this year. None of them included the Phantom on the cover, so I'm assuming then that's another one of those compilations, like a Comics Review book, Germ, that has Phantoms, but a range of other characters as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So 5 issues that included the Phantom, but unfortunately none on the cover. That's pretty similar numbers to the last couple of years, although in the past he's always been on the cover once or twice a year. So hopefully he manages to get back on the front cover of the Hungarian newsstands next year. If we flick then over to South America and Brazil, Mythos, of course, is the publisher over there. This year they had 3 trade paperbacks. One was the Sparta reprints, another was a Ray Moore collection, and then they had a Cy Barry collection as well. This is the first year in a while, though, that we have seen no regular series issues. So in 2019 and 20, they had 7 issues through the year. They had they had 8 issues last year, and then all of a sudden nothing. So we don't really know what's going on with Mythos, and unfortunately, we don't have a Chronicle Chamber team member on the ground in Brazil, or who collects those or subscribes or whatever to the Mythos comics. So if that's you and you can provide us with a bit of information about what's going on, or even provide reviews of the comics that are released or the books that are released, we'd love you to get in touch. So that would be fantastic. Anyone from Brazil who'd be keen on helping Chronicle Chamber out in that regard.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan. All right, flying back over to Europe, to Germany. Look, the Phantoms exploded. Maybe not the best choice of words. Talk about German, it exploded. But look, no, in all seriousness, the Phantom is going, I was about to say great guns. I'm really not choosing my words wise tonight. The Phantom is doing great in Germany. There's been two publishers. There is Zuberstone and Lyck. So Zuberstone has released 5 regular issues. The interesting part about it is that they've got a real mix of stories that they've published. So there's been, in their 5 regular issues, there's been 2 Frew stories. There's been the monster one, and then also the Requiem one, which was by Peter Anderson and Wendell Cavallanti. And then there's been 2 Falk and Frederick, Lee Falk and Fred Frederick stories, which are from the mid-90s. 2 Moonstone stories, including the Julie Walker one. And then one of the stories was like a 3-part story that was like published in one story. So I've included that as one story. And then 1 Team Fantomen story, which was a filming story as well. So in talking to our all these reviews are on our website, of course. In talking to our German reviewer, he feels that the Falk and Frederick stories are not the strongest Lee Falk stories, and have probably not been enjoyed as much as these other stories. So look, I think it's great that they've got the Frew stories and the Moonstones and the Team Fantomen stories. Are able to cherry pick the good ones. I'm not sure what their license is with the newspaper stories, but those stories haven't been received as well. And then, of course, we've got the Lyck publisher, which is from Germany. Again, the reviews on our website. Now, there's been 2 regular issues released so far, I believe. The next one's come out February, I believe. And the good news about those is they've all been sold out. Like, literally, the publisher has got no copies left. And he's actually having to rethink about whether he publishes more comics or not for his future series. There's also the other good thing about it as well is there's been several comics magazines reporting on the German series, which is also a good sign. So there's German comics coming out, and then they're creating a bit of a stir that the reporters are interviewing German creators and interviewing the German publishers as well. So that's good news.
It is good, Jim. And just before we move on to France, could those Lyck ones be selling out because, well, they were German developed, like they're all Bastei comics, aren't they?
Yeah, that's correct, Steve. I think that's partly it. I also think that probably there's not a larger print run because it's literally a one-man band. But in talking to him, he's kind of like, I can't believe that they've all sold out. So he's seriously having to, and he told me, he says, I'm not sure whether I just have them sold out or whether I up the print run by 50%, 20%, or whatever. But then am I stuck with old issues? And look, it's a good problem to have.
It is a very good problem to have. Okay, moving over. I nearly said I was nearly going to use that as a segue, and I thought, it's not going to be good. France. France has come to the party in Phantom Publishing, and we've got one trade paperback, which was all that they've done in, for 2022, which is down by one regular issue in 2022. In 2021, they had one trade paperback and one regular issue. Then over in Norway, they've got their one album, the 1 year album, and 4 chronicle albums. Spain, they have 2 daily strip albums, which is similar to what Hermes does. And in Finland, there's one soft cover album.
So, thank you for summarising those in the end. And look, we've been prattling on about countries for a while, so it's because there's a lot now. We've actually got 11 countries this year, different countries who have published Phantom comics, Germany being the new one. And so that means that we've seen a year-on-year rise over the last few. There were only 9 countries in 2020, 10 last year, and up to 11 this year. So we're on a positive trend. Let's see that trend line continue. 98 different comics were published around the world, which is down a little bit from last year when there was 101. But everyone will have their reasons for it. And we've talked about a few with Hermes Press and Frew in particular having series that they were printing a couple of years ago that have since been discontinued.
Regal also dropped a couple as well. I think they dropped about half. So that's just sorry to cut in.
No.
98 comics. So that's roughly every 2 a week.
2 a week, yeah. Yep.
It's expensive if you collect everything.
I was going to say, of those 98 comics, Jerm, how many do you currently own or are on their way to you?
I reckon probably at least 80. Maybe in the 70s or 80s, I reckon.
Yeah.
Yeah, just as well you don't gamble.
Yeah. Might be able to afford more if I was good at it.
So those are the comics. In terms of the books and the hardcover collections, like what Hermes do, and is coming out in Spain. There was 5 of those this year, which is there was 7 last year, and 4 each of the last couple the years before that. So steady as she goes in the hardcover collections. In terms of brand new stories, and this is probably one of the most exciting things. Expanding countries is fantastic, of course, but 30 brand new stories this year that are not reprints or seen before in any language. So brand new creations that we've seen this year, 30 stories, which is a dramatic increase over the last few years, because in 2021, 2020 and 2019, we were averaging sort of 21, 22 stories. And we're up to 30 suddenly this year. So fantastic to see that raft of creativity coming through. And I wonder if that could be Frew finally seeing the fruits of the seeds they planted a few years ago when Glenn and Dudley commissioned a whole bunch of stories from a whole bunch of people and have had them sitting in the back pocket, and finally getting to put them into the publication runs this year a bit more. Anyway, that's just a off-the-cuff analysis from me.
No, look, it's I guess with Team Fantomen creating 10 every year, Frew doing theirs, and then there's a couple from Lyck as well. So it can add up pretty quick. But yeah, you're right. It's great. So if you look at 30, so that's roughly every second week there's a brand new story that no one has seen coming out.
Yep.
So that's pretty good. All right. So now what we're going to do is
what it does mean is that there's lots of authors and artists out there who are not necessarily making a living off fandom, of course, but certainly have the fandom contributing to their lifestyle and their work list, which is fantastic to see.
Now, one thing we probably would have been really interesting to do is actually identifying the countries where those creators came from, because look, we won't do it, but I reckon it might be something we might do for a post.
Yeah,
because there's just a quick off the top of my head, there's Brazil, there's Peru, there's America, there's Sweden, Norway, Poland, the UK, France, Spain, Australia. So there's 10 just at the top of my head. I reckon there will be quite a few that we've missed as well. So
that will be with a deep dive in a post, I reckon.
Yeah. So we might do that. Dan, can you make a quick note of that, and we'll someone will do that. Someone will do that. So we'll have that answer in about a week or so after this podcast runs out. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go over our favourites. So one of the questions that we discussed is whether you can select reprint stories that have already been reprinted. So yes, you can. Some people who you are going to hear from or who have given responses have not done that, and then others have. So, it's really personal choice. Some people will just like, nah, I'm only focusing on new stuff, and others are like, no, I'm focusing on everything. Now, we will discuss issue numbers. If you're on YouTube, you will see the cover come up. If you're on audio only, we will try and say the cover art. Say, for instance, if it's a cover, we will try and say, issue such and such by, Jamie Johnson. We will try and say that, but we might not. But we will try and do that as well. Okay, so first of all, we are going to do our best non-Frew, non-Fantomen, and non-Indian cover. Now I had to chuck those other nons in because I got told off by one of them that it was confusing for them. So we're choosing 2 each. So what we're going to be doing is whoever's going to be saying it is going to be saying their 2 issues. Then they're going to go over Duncan, Mikael, and Ankit in any order. Some on occasion, like for instance this one, someone might not put an answer down, and then we're going to shoot off to Steve, Dan, Steve, in whatever order. So bear with us as we go through this. I could see someone making a quick edit. So first of all, as we said, this is the best non-Frew, non-Fantomen, or non-Indian cover. So the other publishers. So we're choosing 2 of each. So mine is the John Vius Minton French trade paperback. I'm not sure if you remember, but I said that it's probably the best Phantom publication ever. And then Zubiston #1, which is by Timur Williams. I really love his art. Mikael had Zubiston 1 and 4. And then Ankit had Zubiston #2 and then Phantom #1 from Wyck Publications. Steve?
I've taken one from Mikael and one from Ankit, and also one from yourself, I guess, with Zubiston 1 and 2.
So, quickly, Steve, what do you like about the Zubiston covers?
The art style.
Yeah.
Basically, that's it. The art style of it. When I went through and had a look at all the other international comics, those are the ones that sprung out to me.
Yep, definitely. Dan?
Yeah, that was me making the quick edit because I had a Indian cover in my best non-Indian covers list. So I found that it's interesting. Of course, we break this down like this because Frew, Fantomen, and India are the most prolific producers of covers. So we're going to talk about our favourite of those separately. And I find this a really hard one because I'm jumping around Phantom Wiki pages. I don't have 80 comics a year being delivered to my house from around the world. So the German ones, again, were the ones that stood out for me. And similar to what Steve just said there, the art style is just so dynamic. Those are ones that I probably should get delivered to my house.
Yeah.
I've just been thinking, I know a couple of Germans now. I wonder if I can hook something up.
Christmas with Germans, they give well done.
That's why you had them over for Christmas.
Yeah, one used to be a backpacker, and now she's got a new fella, and yeah.
I'm sure she knows someone in Germany near a newsagent.
Rightio. So moving on from our international friends, to Australia with the best Frew covers. So for this one, we were allowed to choose 3 covers each. And with me, I don't think anyone is going to come as any surprise what I've picked as my number. And like the others, I might say in any particular order. But number 1 has to go to issue 1925. And if you're wondering what issue 1925 is, it's, of course, Paul Mason. And my other 2 in no particular order, but 1931, Glenn Ford, which is one of his collector series covers. And I'm going to give an honorable mention to 1918. I really like the way that he's doing these collector series covers. I don't like all of them that he put out this year, but I particularly like those 2. It really was a toss of the coin between those 2. And my 3rd best Frew cover was Giant Size 20 by Glenn Lumsden. I love the cricket image on the front. I thought that was it's fun. It's what a comic is. It's fun, it's enjoyable, and I love cricket. So I put that one on there. Mikael, he has chosen issues 1909. He's chosen 1925 as well. Good choice there, Mikael. And 1932. Ankit's gone with 1926, 1929, and 1909. And Duncan has gone with 1935, 1917, and 1926. Dan, what have you gone with?
You feel like you're playing bingo when you just
Well, I thought I better slow down, because if you're putting these things up on YouTube, I better slow down a little bit so you got time to put them up.
It's interesting. While you were doing that, it gave me an idea, and I'll talk about that in a second. In terms of the ones that I picked, I also nominated Glenn Ford's one of Glenn Ford's covers for the replica series, and I picked 1918 in particular. That was the one with it looked like a pulp fiction, real noir cover, and that's
what I like about it.
Yeah, it really struck me as, the Phantom wasn't the focus of the image either, but he's clearly, it was a really good cover. Enjoyed that. Issue 1919 by Lauren Marshall. That's the Balloon in the Moon, or Balloon to the Moon issue, with the monkey going bananas in the hot air balloon basket. And when I think when we reviewed that comic, I had just been watching Lego Masters and talked about that as being a really cleverly staged picture with depth to it. And that's what really brought me back to that one as well. And I also picked a Glenn Lumsden giant size cover too. I went with issue 22, which is the Carnival, the Phantom winning big prizes with his sharpshooting abilities. So again, similar to yours there, Steve, about just loving the cricket. I just love the fun that Glenn Lumsden has with those covers, and the Carnival was the most fun for mine.
Yeah, definitely. For me, it was 1914 by Glenn Lumsden, but it was one of the regular issues. It was the Death in the East End, and you've got Madam X in the wheelchair, and then you've got the Phantom in the shadows, and it's just, I like the Phantom in the shadows. It's really powerful. It just really enjoyed it. For me, I found the covers this year really hard to vote on, because in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, there wasn't a huge one that just was like higher than everything else. There was probably about 5-10 that were all really, really good, and that I really liked. And so I found it hard to kind of choose just 3 of those 10. One of the other ones that I chose was 1925, which was the Paul Mason one. Now,
good choice.
I am biased in the sense that I own that original artwork. So, vested, very biased in choosing that one.
You have a good eye.
Yeah. And the other one was 1934, which was the Christmas cover as well. He's talked about fun and enjoyment and stuff like that. And for me, that's what I see with that Christmas cover, is that it's fun. You got the Phantom with the sack, with the skull, with the Christmas hat on it. It's just it's fun. So I really like that cover as well.
It's really interesting that not in any particular order, but at least one of our choices has gone for that without any talking amongst ourselves. And I know we've been doing the run sheet, but I didn't see what 1934 was. I didn't see what giant size 22 was. But we've all come up with a fun one to put in our top three. But let's have a look what the wider public have voted for their best Frew cover. So do we go top 15? We've got top 15 here, noticing that there's a few ties, few draws. So,
well, I typically I report on the top 10, but I included, there's a story I feel to positions 11 through 15. So that's why I just included them on the run sheet there. But yeah.
So what's the story that you like? Do you want me to say what they are first, and then you're going to tell the story?
Top 10, and then I'll tell you the story of the last two.
Okay. Oh, I was going to start from the end and work my way up to number 1.
Oh, okay. We'll do that then. But go from 10.
Go from 10. Okay. So our top 10 are issues 1931 from Glenn Ford and 1934 by Giancarlo Catacuzzo. Do I say the percentages?
Yeah.
7.8 for the two of those. In 8th position, we have issue number 1926 with the Alex Tripp and 1933 Fantomen covers, and they were on 9.5% of the vote. Placing in 7th by his lonesome is Glenn Ford with issue 1911 with 10.3% of the vote. Number 6, issue 1913 is Lillian McDonnell with 11.2. Issue placing number 5 is issue 1927. That was a decent 80s band, wasn't it? Jeremy McPherson with 12.1% of the vote. And our top 3, and there's actually 4 issues in our top 3. So coming equal third, we have 1917 by Nicholas Scott and 1925 by Paul Mason, both on 13.8%. Coming in at number 2, we have issue 1919 by Lauren Marshall with 20.7% of the vote. And placing first with 24, so nearly a quarter of the votes, 24.1%, goes to Matt Kime with issue 1930. Now, I'm going to kick over here to Dan because he's got a bit of a story here about the ones that are just outside the top 10.
Yeah, so just outside the top 10, I just thought it was really interesting that we've got no double ups whatsoever in the top 10. There's no artist that's got 2 entries in the top 10.
No, Glenn Ford.
Sorry?
Glenn Ford.
My apologies, Glenn Ford. Of course he does, yes. But outside that, and then just a couple of votes outside the top 10 was a 4-way tie with Ivan Rodriguez having 2 covers, 1932 and 1909, and Glenn Lumsden also having 2 covers, 1910 and 1914, and only a vote back further than that in 15th place was Glenn Lumsden again. So neither Ivan or Glenn Lumsden managed to get into the top 10, but gee, they were knocking on the door. So I just
There's like 2 runaway winners. Like you've got a 20% and a 24% with Matt Kime and Lauren Marshall. So they're kind of like fairly, and then the next best is 13.8. So it's a 6%, 7% difference. But there's a very good point. The other thing that I like is that there's a lot of different art styles in that top 10. So you got Glenn, which had his newer feel. You had Lauren Marshall, who's got that more, I don't know, lack of a better word, that more cartoony feel, and then Matt Kime as well, which was a totally different style as well. And then you might have Fantomen and Jeremy McPherson, which have similar style as well, but there's a lot of different styles in there. And I think that's probably the beauty about what Frew have done this year. And dare I say it, probably done it better than what Team Fantomen have done, is whether they have their covers like a wider range of art styles, which could, well, hopefully, get more viewers and more readers, because people go, oh, I like that cover, and and stuff in it. You know, like yeah. So it's nice looking at those results.
And it was interesting that we had female cover artists for the first time on Frew this year. Hard to believe that you're saying that in 2022. But 3 of the top 6 were female artists in Lauren Marshall, Nicola Scott, and Lily McDonald. All of whom are obviously first-time cover artists for Frew. I must confess I'm not as familiar with the work of Lauren and Lily, but Nicola Scott is an internationally renowned artist in her own right, and it's just fantastic, I think, to see that it's those 3 ladies right now. But you also look on that list and it's Matt Kine, Paul Mason, Jerry McPherson, Alex Tripp, and even Giancarlo, all guys who got their start with Frew just in the last few years. For them to be continuing to feature high, and then of course, and I should pay great credit to Glenn Ford being the only artist to feature twice, and both of them for the replica series. And who would have thought that suddenly the replica series is multiple covers, favorite covers?
I would actually vote for saying that I thought they were good covers, like rather than just whatever.
The one I voted for is not there, but it's interesting too, going through the bingo numbers that Steve had before while I was keeping an eye on the ladder. We didn't actually agree with the final results a lot amongst the 6 of us. We're all represented a little bit, but lots of our favourites are not there, and that speaks to what you were saying too, Jerm, about it being such an even race this year, and everybody's going to have their own personal favourite, but there's a lot to choose from, and it's fantastic.
One I feel really bad for not putting on was Grange. I really want to put his cover on, but I just if I was going to take any out, I would have taken out the Glenn Ford and put Grange in, but I couldn't do it. I'm sorry, Grange. My apologies.
Grange. I just want to say 2 quick things. Lauren Marshall, all you need to know is that she's a good WA perf girl.
Sure, there's more to her than that.
Oh, there is. She's a great artist as well, but she's got that going for her. I've actually met her as well when over at Supernova this year. Lovely girl. Just had a baby daughter as well recently this year in the last 6 months as well. So that's pretty cool. Also, but the other probably exciting thing is Matt Kine, Lauren Marshall, Paul Mason, Nicola Scott, Jerry McPherson, Alex Tripp. They're all our age or a little bit older and younger. And I think that's something that should be, and I believe Ivan Rodriguez is youngish as well, is that we're not talking about 60, 70-year-old artists. We're talking about up-and-coming artists who have lots of covers and maybe even stories to come.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, really good point. And of course I am on the best marksman cover. I can't believe this is not a coincidence.
It actually was, to be truthfully honest.
I just appreciate that I got green, because to me that's the easiest one to read the highlight through. So appreciate that. Look, I was saying just before we went there, I always feel kind of a bit of a fraud when I'm voting for. Or did I say that on there about the around the world ones? I'm not sure. Again, I don't get Fantomen covers delivered to my house, so I'm choosing them off a computer screen. We talked about Henrik Sahlstrom doing the majority of the covers for Team Fantomen, and he was responsible for all 3 of the favourites that I picked from the great Fandom Wiki site. Issue 4, which I think was the large scale against the silhouette, Jerm will have it on the screen if you're on YouTube, or go to Fandom Wiki. But issue 4, I also liked issue 25, 26, and also 2, 3 that came out this year. Mikael as the local Swede, and with the best information, I think he agreed with me, so he's a wise man. He also thought that issue 2, 3 was one of his best 3. He also picked issue 4, so we're on the same page there, but he went with issue 12 as well. Ankit picked 2, 3, so that's clearly a popular one. He also went with 10, 11, and 4. So 2, 3, and 4 are all getting lots of votes at the moment. Duncan also picked 2, 3, so we have a winner. Depending on what you guys say. Do you think
Duncan's a little bit biased with that vote? So
2, 3
featured his story.
he always acknowledges bias when he does his votes, and he's acknowledged it throughout his comments. So, look, to be fair, if I had a story published, I'd vote for it left, right, and centre too. He also picked issue 1011, same as Ankit, and issue 12 along with Mikael. So a few common themes there. Jerm, what did you think?
So I picked 4, which has been voted, 1, 2, 3 times out of the 4 as well. 12, which has again been voted 2 of the previous ones. And then I also went for 21, which I don't think has been picked yet. And that's by Luca Alberta. And then 4 and 12 are done by Selstrom. So, yeah, a lot of similar votes.
Yeah. Yeah. Steve?
Sorry, I just went and had a look at number 4 to see what did I miss out, but no, I'm still not voting for it. So I voted 16. I always like it when it's got the Phantom coming out of the trench coat. You know, the old transition from Mr. Walker to the Phantom. Always like that. Issue 10 to 11, which is got Phantom Head Peak. I think Duncan also chose that, and so did Ankit. And I went with issue 2-3 with the window smash as well.
So 2-3, we all voted for that except for you, Jim. So
yeah. So if we're
clearly-
going literally by probably just there's how many is there? 6 of us. 2, 3, and then 4 will be 1 and then 2.
To keep an eye on the results of that survey when they come out.
Well, Mikael can do that when he does the post on which one has been voted as the best.
For you to
So the next one we're going to talk about is the best Indian cover. Now we're going to choose 2 of those. Now Ankit has refrained from voting because, unlike Duncan, he is not going to vote on his own stuff. So
It's not like Duncan was doing the covers.
Yeah. Hey, he's not here to defend himself. It means I can pay him out. I'll know when he'll send me a reply at like 2:00 in the morning or something like that. Like, oi, leave me alone. So I chose Regal number 28, which is by Ankit. And then now the next one I chose is not actually just solely based on the cover, if that makes sense. And that is Shakti number 4, which was interesting also by Ankit. But I voted for that because of the feel of the cover as well as the actual comic in itself. I recently got this comic, and again, if it's on YouTube, you'll be able to see it. If it's not on YouTube, it's the Phantom. It's the Mexican series, the Phantom, and another guy who they're doing, karate and stuff like that. But the comic has a really nice, like, dual tone feel to it. Remember how some of the Fantomen ones do it as well, where they have like a 2-tone feel. The Frew, that little pink fuzzy side with by Chris Weil. So it's not anything like that, but it's like a bumpy type of print feel to it. But it's just like I looked at it and I went, oh, that's a nice cover, and then I picked it up and it's like, oh wow, it's got a different feel to it. And last year I talked about how when images had logos or had stuff going over the logo, which kind of gave it a 3D look. For me, what I liked about it is that you pick it up and it's like, oh, this feels different. And it's the same as when you have like the 2-tone feel to the cover. It's like, it's memorable because you pick it up and it's like, oh, like that embossed Frew cover for the 80th series where, the Phantom had muscles and there was the bullet holes and stuff like that. I remember reviewing it and we couldn't, and Stephen spent like 5 minutes just rubbing his hands over the emboss. And it's the same type of thing here. It was a standout for me. Duncan did the trade paperback and by Regal and also Regal 27. Mikael did Regal 28, which was the same as me, and then the Terror of the Python, which was the trade paperback, which Duncan has also voted as well, which was good as well. Steve?
I'll just see here now that we're only supposed to pick 2. I thought you had to pick 3.
Pick
Go
3, mate. You've got 3. Might as well give it to us.
I've got 3 now. I went with the trade paperback, Terror of the Python. I went with the Christmas issue because it's fun. And I went with Shakti 5.
Yeah, Shakti 5, that was like a different style. That was like the horror theme one, wasn't it?
No, it was the wrestling one.
Oh,
the
yes,
zombie one.
yes.
Not when there's a Lucha Libre one going on.
Yes, you are a wrestling fan. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Dan, how about you, mate?
Well, I wish I'd got a hold of a copy of this Shakti 4 so I could feel the print cover. This is why I wasn't picking it, because get a nice enough picture. But the 2 that I picked were actually both from Regal. 28, which I think a couple of people have said was the Christmas cover, and I just really like the simplicity of that. The Polaroid shot against the Christmas decorations. A lot of fun happening in the looks like a good old family Christmas being captured for a moment there, and also by Ankit, Mitra, The Terror of the Phantom trade paperback, which a few people have said as well. It stands out and is a awesome picture in its own right. I also really enjoyed Ankit showing us a bit behind the scenes as that came together as well. So, those were my 2 favourite Indians.
Very good. On that Christmas issue with the idea of the Polaroid, worth noting that over this past Christmas, at least 2 members of my family got Polaroid cameras and were taking photos and got
Right, there you go.
yeah, and had making little photo walls and stuff. Sorry?
Ankit's got his finger on the pulse.
He does. Okay, moving on from covers to writers. So we can pick 3 writers, and as we
This was hard.
We mentioned at the start of the podcast, how many stories? 90-something stories. So that's, and not saying that there's 90-something writers, but there's a heck of a lot of writers to choose from. I've chosen, well, there's no surprise, I've gone with Paul Mason because I really liked the way he did the Masked Marvel issue, using the sports broadcast and then bringing it into the story. I thought was phenomenal. Something I hadn't seen before. I thought that was fantastic. Of course, go with Tony DePaul with what he is doing in the newspaper strip, or the Comics Kingdom strip, or the official KFS, whatever you want to call it now, is just incredible. He's on a different level. He's on about 10 different levels all at the same time, and we're trying to figure out what's going to happen next. What is he drip feeding us that we're going to need to know in about 2 years' time, or maybe 5? And I haven't seen today's strip yet. I want to know what's in the mist. What's so good now? The devil is with the Phantom. We know that he's not there by accident. Nothing that Tony writes is there by accident. Why? What can Devil see, and how is this going to change? What's going to happen to the Phantom? And I went with Shane Foley because I enjoyed his work. Sorry, Shane. I've talked up the other 2 a lot more, but I did enjoy the stories as well, mate. Mikael, he went with Tony DePaul. He went with Pide. No, he didn't. Yes, he did with Pide and Andreas
Eriksson.
Andreas Eriksson, that's correct. I nearly went with Pide, but it was probably a toss-up between him and Foley, if I'm being honest.
It was hard. It was really hard.
It really was.
It was. This is the hardest one for me.
Duncan, he's gone with Paul Mason, Tony DePaul, and with Matt Kime. And Ankit, he's gone with Pide, Tony DePaul, and Paul Mason. And Jam, who have you gone with?
Look, as I said, this was the hardest one. I spent the most time going on this. I haven't chosen Tony DePaul purely because I know he's been mentioned a few times, and I do love what he's saying, but I wanted to kind of give a bit of love to everyone else. So I went with Matt Kime and Shane Foley, as well as Peter Anderson, and I went with those 3, and then I'm missing others like Paul Mason. Really loved his story. Lee Falk, and Andreas. I've enjoyed some of his stories, but I went with Matt Kime, Shane Foley, and Peter Anderson purely because I like what they're doing by adding to the mythos or to the lore of the Phantom. They're showing respect to the Phantom. They're adding to it, but they have that respect to past, Wilson McCoy stories, Lee Falk stories, and they're bridging and they're filling holes. And I just really like that respect that they're showing, and they're creating good stories. Really enjoyed what Matt Kine and Shane Foley have done, and Peter Anderson with The Vultures, which was published in Fantomen. The Outlaw story, which was also published in Fantomen, so it kind of does count.
That's
Good votes for multiple years in this.
It's just I have really enjoyed what they're doing, and I think they're showing a great respect. And I kind of hope that they get to create some more stories, because I think, I'm missing Paul Mason, Duncan Munro for the same things as what I've said about them as well. So, David Bishop is another one who understands the Phantom as well. So, yeah, it was a hard one. But Dan.
3 each, and you managed to talk about 10 different authors, I think.
Yeah, well, I think you had was it you that had? No, it was Steve that had an extra one last time. So
I've got no one out of left field. Peter Paul for me, for all the reasons that Steve said. He stands head and shoulders above the rest, to be honest. The continuity that he's maintaining and managing, whilst on the other hand, having a second story in the works as well, and the challenge of drip feeding a story to people is incredible. Every other author we talk about is writing, at worst a 3-part series of 8 pages at a time, like 3 chapters. To be only releasing a panel a day is an incredible feat in itself. Paul Mason, for mine, for all the same reasons that Steve said, I'm agreeing with him a lot. But
I knew you were a good fella.
Yeah, and look, Paul's featured heavily on this list. Besides Jermayn, you even managed to squeeze him into your top 10, Jermayn. So, but no, I really love the depth of knowledge and research that comes out of Paul's stories. Never sounds preachy or academic or anything like that. You're just finding stuff out as you go. But the depth of knowledge and the way that the respect shown to the character and building on that Masked Marvel idea, the story of redemption that the Masked Marvel himself got in the sequel, I really enjoyed that. And for my third, in the great toss-up that we've all done, I landed on Peter Anderson, and I picked him for his work in 2022 during the Belle Epoque series in Paris. I really like I like Peter's style. I think he's and I hope he won't mind me saying this, I think he is on a good journey of development in his story writing, and the way that he represents his characters and that sort of thing. And I really like the direction that he's going, the growth that he's showing as an author. And I've enjoyed his work from this year more than I did his work from last year. And the way that he goes, I can't wait to see what he's producing 5-10 years from now. I think he's and I guess at the end of the day, it was sheer volume of stories that he produced this year or had published this year that probably tipped him over the line from the others.
Yeah,
I agree with you there, Dan. I haven't always liked Piret's stuff in the past, but with the Belle Epoque, I think I put that series down somewhere a little bit further down. But I think he's on a good wicket now, and I'm enjoying his stories more than I have in the past. In the past, his humour hadn't always landed well with me.
Yeah,
I've found that this year things are going well. In my mind, anyway. You probably think that things have always been going well.
One of the things just to add about Paul as well is I don't think I visit Wikipedia as much as I do after reading his stories compared to any other creator. It's like you read one of his stories and it's like, I need to learn more about this, and then you go for a deep dive on Wikipedia and stuff like that. And I think that's really helpful, where you're learning, but it's also a healthy, it's not too preachy. But yeah, so I think that's
Yeah.
Yeah.
good enough.
None of his Vietnam stories were published this year. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was because when I went to vote for the cover, I thought, oh, there's no Nam stories. On a side note, though, I've just been reading his Soldier's Legacy series, well, a couple of the chapters from it, which came out. Well, that was a reward thing I got from his Flock Kickstarter. And yeah, and like you said, the research that goes into it is absolutely incredible. So I just read issues 4 and 5, I think, again over the last couple of days. And exactly what you said, you just want to go back and learn more because he's done his well. It seems from the reader's point of view that he's done his research. Now, Germ, did the power just go out over in WA? Or?
No, I've got
You're just playing with your light bulb
automotive lights. So for instance, like this is my Phantom hue, my Phantom purple color, and my wife just did a thing to turn off all the lights. So yeah, so it was just let me get that back. There we go.
There
I
you
think
go.
that's right.
Yeah, so if he's got himself sorted, you're green, aren't you, Dan?
While Germ sorts out his power issues, we'll go on and have a talk about the best story artists because this is probably not much easier than the authors, and I'll be very interested to hear the list of artists that Germ couldn't get into his top 2. But we had to pick
90
2.
stories, so it's going to be 90 artists.
We had to try and land on 2. The 2 that I picked were Mike Manley from the Daily, the newspaper, the KFS dailies. And this is absolutely no disrespect to, I think it was Scott Hon who picked up the story in the middle of the year while Mike was crook. But having that period of time where Mike wasn't able to do the strips and going back and forth between the 2 art styles just made me really appreciate, you don't know what you've it's gone perhaps, but it made me really appreciate the dynamism in Mike's artwork in particular. And I love the action sequences that he depicts. And again, telling a story in just a panel or 2 is that challenge. And Anthony Spey probably surprised me a bit. I probably wouldn't have necessarily thought that he was one of my favourite artists. But then when
Did he do any stories this year?
Sorry?
Did he do any Frew stories this year? I know some of his stories were published in Fantomen.
I don't know. I'd have to go back and have a look.
I'm just pulling you up because you pulled me up 5 minutes ago.
It stopped me in my tracks because I don't know. But
no, you're right. Anthony's work's really been enjoyable, and he does it quickly as well.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So what do you like? Sorry, what do you like about Spey?
Just the clarity of his images, I think, is what stands out for me. He's just simple and clear. So I was just about to read around that. Jerm's making edits on the run sheet. That's all good. So in terms of their favourite story artists, Duncan has declared his bias openly again, and said, well, I may have written the story, but Daniel Picciotto illustrated it, and that makes him the best illustrator that's going around at the moment. And Duncan picked Anthony Spey, so I'll hide behind my large friend and say that Duncan picked him first as well. Ankit has nominated Giannis Orden, Anthony Spey, and Daniel Picciotto. Maybe we all saw what Duncan voted for first. And Mikael, I'm in good company. Mikael has voted for Giannis Orden and Anthony Spey. So Spey's turned up for all 4 of us so far. So I assume he must have published some stories this year.
Yeah, well, no, he did. His Vulture stories were in Fantomen.
Yeah, there you go. All right, Steve, what did you go with?
I went with Paul Mason for the boxing. That, like I said before, the way he did the transition from the sports broadcast into the Phantom story, and just everything that comes out of that is just phenomenal. And like I said in the last session, I'm reading his Soldier's Legacy. I really like his style. I've said it for years now. I'm going to keep on saying it for years. And I had to double check, and I'm pretty sure that Samuel hasn't had anything published. Well, not in Australia anyway.
He did have one story in Team Fantomen.
Yeah, so not in Australia, so I didn't read it. So I can't put him up. And Mike Manley, for all the reasons that we've said before, or that Dan said earlier, the way he's able to do his work in 2 or 3 panels is fantastic. And also, not only reading his work in the Phantom, but on Comics Kingdom, he's also in Judge Parker, doing the artwork there. So I've started reading Judge Parker for the sheer fact that Mike Manley is drawing it.
Awesome.
There you go.
Well, I've gone Janice Auden. His stories have been published in Frew and also Team Fantomen. But one of the things I like about, and I know there's been a couple of others, Ankit and Mikael have also voted for him as well, is that his work looks great in black and white and color. And I know we've done a bit of comparison in this in past comics and news podcasts, and like you with one of them we actually put the same panel color and black and white, and I think from memory we're all like, oh, I like that one, oh, I like that one, and there was bits that we liked about both of it, and his work just works. He's a nice guy as well. We've emailed him a couple of times, and yeah, just really enjoy his work. The other one is Jeff Weigel. It's interesting we've mentioned Mike Manley, and then myself, Jeff Weigel as well. Really enjoying the detail he puts in his stories. I know 2022 wasn't an easy year for him either, but still being able to produce a top level has probably dumbfounded me. He's got, yeah, I'm really enjoying his work. There's a lot of work goes into the facial features of the Phantom, and also probably other characters as well, which I probably haven't appreciated as much. And last podcast in the Comics and News one talked about, say, someone like a Fantomen who has limited facial expressions and facial lines and stuff, and then you go to Jeff Weigel, who's probably the opposite. And yeah, just really like his work. In looking at the ones that the 6 of us have gone through, there's 6 artists that we've all chosen. A lot of them do cross over. So yeah, it's rather interesting. All right, so the next one we're going to be talking about is the overall best story published by Frew. So these are a story that's been published by Frew in 2022. So it could be old stories, it could be new stories, it could be folk stories, etc., etc. So I went with Issue with Heloise, which was the 3-parter. I went with Flame, the original story, and then Until the Final Bell, which is the Paul Mason story, which we've talked about a lot as well. Mikael went with Femme Fatale, which is the Andreas and Ivan Rodriguez story, which I believe was published in Frew at the start of the year, then also in Team Fantomen towards the end of the year. Issue with Heloise, and then also Until the Final Bell. Ankit has gone Until the Final Bell, Femme Fatale, and then also Flame. So there's a lot of similarities so far. Duncan has gone Until the Final Bell, Flame, and Issue of Heloise. Now, Steve, have you got anything different?
Oh, yes, I do. Apart from Until the Final Bell, because that's just a knockout. And I'll put that number 1. See what I did there? Yeah.
Yeah. You
Just
don't
point
have
that
to need to count from 1 to 10 on that one?
Yeah. And I put Piday's Bell Epoch Saga in as well.
Good choice.
Because however many issues it was, and I enjoyed it. I did say I've enjoyed his writings. Yeah,
That's a clever way of getting 6 stories into one, because Piday would be the first to say that they're independent stories.
Yeah, but it's what I said, saga. So whatever you like. And something a little bit left field. No one has touched this one. I don't think we've mentioned it at all. Now, it could also be because it wasn't actually on the voting list either on the Google thing. But the Leopard Cult, I thought this was a good little story. It came it's an old story, if I remember correctly, like 80s or something like that. And but to me, it reminded me of those old, Fantomen stories, or even Eastern Dark, I think, where the Phantom's got to knock over the old stone idol or whatever it is, and overcome this false god. And I really liked the story. It was a fun little story. So, and there was a bit of MacGyver action there, if I remember correctly, too, using the barbecue to crack the pool. So that was fun.
Yeah. No, it's a good choice.
Oh no, I chose it. I chose it. I chose it. I chose it.
Well,
Dan,
unfortunately,
have you got any different?
a little bit, and I do apologise to everyone involved with the leopard cult, and also Death in Carpathia from 1929. Somehow, neither of those two stories made it onto the surveys to choose from. Actually, I know exactly why. It's because Matt Kimes' three-parter was in and around there, and I got distracted by putting that together. And anyway, so. They will not be in the results of the survey, unfortunately. But anyway, the way that went, I think the results would have been much the same. Anyway, look, a little bit of similarity for me. I certainly went with Issue with Heloise as one of my top three, in no particular order. Actually, the order would be Until the Final Bell, which would be first, and is common amongst all of us. So Until the Final Bell from Paul Mason, then Issue with Heloise. And I guess my left field one would be Vigil at Phantom Head, which was the Tony DePaul my story in the Christmas special, which maybe it's a bias of frequency or something. Of recency, a recency bias, having just read it. But I really enjoyed that story, and the flashbacks with Cy Barry images in particular really caught my eye with that one. I'm going to give a shout out, and I'm going to use my bonus turns this time, because we got to vote for 5 in the survey, and Germ said no, only 3 in the thing. I also had Beneath the Streets of Paris, one of the stories from the Belle Epoque saga, and Welcome Aboard, which was the sequel to the Flame story, as my rounding up my top 5 if I was allowed to have them.
Okay, so as we've made mention before, we recently did a Frew survey. One of the options was the best Frew story. So again, if you have come in halfway or haven't listened to the previous bit, there will be a post detailing all the top 10 and trends and interesting notes and stuff like that coming out a couple of days after this podcast. So if we go from 10 and counting to 1. Now, again, there were a couple that was similar. So at equal 10th, we have The Flame by Norman Walker and George Best, which is 1920, and Return of the Eastern Dark by Duncan Munro and Daniel Picciotto, which is in 1910. That received, or those two stories received, 9.1% of all votes. So almost 1 out of 10 chose that story. 9th is The Balloon for the Moon by Peter Anderson and Percy Okra, which is in 1919, and that received 10% of the votes. Equal 6 is The Phantom Goes to Hell, which is one of the Belle Epoque series by Peter Anderson and Percy Okra in 1912. Guardian of the Eastern Dark by Lee Falk and Cy Barry, which is in 1910, which was the annual. And Femme Fatale by Andreas Erikson and Ivan Rodriguez, which is in 1909, which Femme Fatale, you might remember, was, I think it was Mikael and Ankit voted for that. Now, that received 10.9% of all votes. So from 6 to 10, there's maybe 1 or 2 votes, and basically 1 out of every 10 voted for one of those stories. So at number 5 is The Heavyweight Champion by Lee Falk and Wilson McCoy, which was in one of the the Collector's Replica stories, which was 1911. That received 12.7% of all votes. And then number 4, again, another Lee Falk and Wilson McCoy story, another boxing story, is The Masked Marvel, and that received 13.6% of the votes, and that was in issue 1925. Number 3 is Until the Final Bell by Paul Mason, which was in 1925, and that received 17.3% of the votes. So, you know, just under 2 out of 10 voted for one of those. No, 2 out of 5. Is that? Yeah, 1 out of 5 voted for that. The second best story as voted by the public is The Manhunt, which is by Matt Kine, which was in issue 1930, and that received a whopping 28.2% of all votes. And number 1, which I think every single one of us voted for, except Ankit and Steve, is The Issue with Heloise, and that was by Matt Kime and Shane Foley. That was a 3-part story, which was in 1917, 1919, and 1921, and that received a whopping 31.8% of all votes. Anything you want to quickly raise about some of those votes? And then, of course, we will go further details in our post, which will be up in a couple of days.
There's a few interesting things in there, isn't there? Straight away, you sort of mentioned there another boxing story. So we actually had 3 of the top 5 boxing stories.
Well, just like Hollywood, boxing movies don't fail.
Yeah. I did enjoy those stories, particularly Until the Final Bell we've raved about. But I'd hope that Dudley doesn't see these results and decide, all boxing stories from now on.
He got a top 10. He got 10.
Yeah, and it's interesting too that one of those actually came from a replica series, similar to what we said about Glenn Ford's covers. I'm not sure that we've had a story published in a replica issue feature in our top 10 before, let alone in the top 5. So,
so is it worth?
I'm pretty sure I voted for the heavyweight champion in the thing because I like that story. I like the
story as well. It's worth noting that we've probably a good 2-3 years have talked about how they need to have single covers for the replica issues. Frew finally listened to us, and I think it's fair to say that we were right, because Glenn Ford's covers have been in the top 10. One of the stories has been in the top 5. Should have done it a couple of years ago.
Just puts everyone in a better frame of mind for it, you reckon?
Yeah, well, I don't look. Yeah,
I think that Matt Kime should be really stoked with himself. And
1 and 2.
The way that things land, because to have the top 2 voted stories, and you're right, both of those received almost 1 in 3. Every third person who voted for one of those 2 stories.
Well, actually, no. If you add them up, it's almost 1 out of 2 voted for one of those stories. 31 and 28%.
Oh no! I mean, for each of those stories. So So. So congratulations to Matt. He and Peter Anderson both feature twice in the top 10. Only trumped by Lee Falk, who had 3 stories, of course.
So another thing that's interesting is Masked Marvel, heavyweight champion, Guardian of the Eastern Dark, Flame, and then just outside in 11th, the female Phantom. So that's what. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of the top 12 or something are all reprint stories.
Yeah, and to go with the this other story that tied in 11th place with the female Phantom was Wolves in London by Andrew Constant and Jason Polar. So that's basically. We're a 50-50 split as a voting group public in terms of do we like the new stuff or the old stuff. It goes to show Frew should and will keep printing both.
I like the new stuff just as much as the old stuff. Isn't that the old Regurgitator song? Not quite, but it works. Okay. Breaking with tradition, Dan, I'm going to take the Fantomen stories now. Yeah. Well, it's Mikael, but I'm just going to read his results, what he said. Unless we've got him recorded doing it. No.
So look, the reason why we've gone with what Mikael and then also later on Ankit is because they read the stories, they got the comics, they read it and stuff like that. So we just thought we will let them do the votes and then we'll go from there.
Just looking at the some of the story titles that you've got ahead of you there, Steve.
Well, just while you were talking before, I did a sneaky little copy and paste in a Google Translate.
Okay.
Well done.
So, Mikael, but I'll have a crack at it, but it's going to be my Australian English trying to read Swedish, and it won't match. But overall, best Fantomen story, his top three. I thought there was only two there. Then he put two. Den Oversvarmed Staden, or in English, The Flooded City. And the other one, I think it says Chains of Coast of Chains. Hang on, the Coast of the Chains is what it comes up in Google Translate, and it's Kedjornis Kust. I'm assuming. Please don't hurt me. Best Fantomen issue is the issue 1415. Main story got some press, and a reprint of King of Chicago was great. Yeah, that is a great story. What a good story to put into as a backup.
So that 1415 is a story about the Phantom battling a Sing pirate, which takes place on a island in Sweden, where all the politicians kind of go to do their rallies, from what I understand. And yeah, it got a lot of press. So, you know, and it was a story created by Mikael Soul, I believe, from memory. And so every time a Fantomen comic gets, you know, in mainstream media, it's a good thing.
Yes.
And, you know, Mikael Soul has kind of had his fingers in the pie and getting a few stories, being able to get the stories or the comics into the press, and so yeah, it's a good choice by Mikael.
Cool. It's interesting that he doesn't judge a book by its cover, because he didn't pick that as one of his top covers, and neither did anyone else. Letting you know. Now moving over to the Indian stories, we've got Ankit. He's saying that nothing original but the release of legal Barry stories in new colours in India again was significant, and also the trade paperback collection of stories. And his best Indian issue is the Chatu Saga, the trade paperback.
Yeah. I think that's probably...
I don't get a lot of comics from overseas, but I did get that one, and I can vouch for it. It's a really good volume.
I'll do myself a favour and go get it.
Yeah, well, I know Frew have brought some in, and it's sold out within. So I think they brought in, from what I've been told, they brought in like 30 or 50 copies. They sold out like the 30, 40 online within an hour or two, and then they had 10 for the Supernova. And when I left at about 1 o'clock, there was one issue left. So. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Dan. Then you get to do the best Frew issues now, Dan. You must be.
Yeah, that's Frew issues. So this was another question that we had in the survey, the last of the 3 questions that people voted on, and that was your favourite issue of Frew this year, and that's when you consider the whole package with how you rate the cover together with whatever the contents of the stories are, however many contents however many different stories there are, if there's a theme to it, and in the case of the annual, you get the replica as a supplement as well. No other supplements this year with any of the books. So in terms of the best Frew issues, my 3 were all, I guess, themed in a way. The 2022 annual stood out for me. The Guardian of the Eastern Dark themed stories. I love the fact that that features stories that I haven't read before. Like I'm quite familiar with the daily newspaper, or the Leaf Orc and the Cybari stories of Guardian of the Eastern Dark, but then to add in the ones from, I want to say Moonstone, Germ.
Yes, there was a Moonstone story and also the new story.
And of course, the new story as well from Duncan and Daniel. So love that as a package. Masked Marvel, the Masked Marvel special with the cover, which we've all loved. The Masked Marvel original story from Lee Falk, and then of course the backup the sequel until the final bell from Paul Mason. So love that issue. And then the Christmas special, I enjoy every year. I like the cover as well, Germ. And then of course to be able to catch up on some of the Syndicate stories all together, packaged together, is always a highlight for me. From Mikael, he went with issue 1909. I'm not sure which one that was off the top of my head.
I think that was the
Femme Fatale. 1934, which was the Christmas special, and he also picked the trade paperback, the Ghost and the graphic novel from Frew, The Ghost and the Monster. Ankit went with the Flame special, which again featured the original or reprint story of the Flame, with the new sequel that was created by Andrew Constant and Wendell Cavalcante, and the Masked Marvel special following the same sort of publishing format. Duncan has gone for the Masked Marvel as well. He declares his bias, having written a story for the 2022 annual, but he's voted that as one of his favourites as well. But he does, and given that he's written in the universe, of course, he loves those Eastern Dark stories, and the Flame special. So we're noticing a theme here. Jeremy, are you going to break the theme?
No. I've gone the 2022 annual. And I've been a huge critic of the annual, but I like themes. Gone by the Flame special, and then also 1925, which was the Masked Marvels special. It's interesting. Actually, I'll wait until afterwards. Steve, I'll let you go, and then I'll say something.
Okay, so I'm not breaking with tradition at all, and I'm going with 1925, the Masked Marvel. I've also put in the annual, just like Germ. I do like a theme, and with Frew doing that recently, we had westerns, we had women, we've had the Eastern Dark this year, we've had Eden. I really like these ideas about having a theme for the annual. Do we know what the theme is coming up for?
No, the preview's got a story by Graham Nolan, so I'm actually going to put. By the time this comes out, you would have seen it on social media. Asking what people think might the theme be. If I was a betting man, again, which we've already said we're not, I reckon it might be a Graham Nolan.
Okay.
A collection of Graham
artist,
Nolan would be good.
Because all those stories have been out of print for close to 20 years. He's done a Moonstone story as well.
How many newspaper stories did he do?
He did probably about... I don't know at the top of my head, but it would be probably about 6 to 8 maybe. And then there was so Moonstone released the little Sunday collection, and it was 2 issues. So if you kind of move those together, it might fit. And then I don't know, you could maybe even put the trading cards that he's done as well. Could do that as a story. So I don't know. Look, there's no hint in the latest issue. Haven't seen anything online.
He's done. I've just picked him up on FansWiki. He's done too much for it to be a complete collection of Graham Nolan, which is what I wanted. He's actually done 13 Sunday stories. So he did 13 of those. He's got a Team Fantomen story, one Moonstone. He was the
writer, right?
Sorry?
He was the writer for the Team Fantomen story?
No, that's the boy from San Diablo, Kari Lapanen. Oh, sorry, you're right. He was the writer. My bad. With Kari Lapanen as the artist. He was the artist on the Moonstone story, and then, as you say, the Trading Path, Death's Dark Path. Not a lot of people will have read that, so that would be cool if that suddenly found its way into a comic book.
Yeah, look, I don't know. It's, I don't know what the theme is at the moment. Yeah. So, look, by the time this comes out, we'll probably know what the theme is. So, we recorded this on the 5th of January. So, if we are right,
we'll soon find out.
There you go. Now, we do have a podcast with Graham Nolan. I can't remember the issue number of that, but again, if you're on YouTube, you'll be able to see that.
And now, my number 3 is the Christmas special.
All right. So before Dan goes over the results, I'll try saying this for the 3rd time. But it's interesting. Every single issue except one. So that's 6 times 3 for those who, are good at maths.
18 usually.
Yeah, okay. So out of the 18 choices that we all chose, 17 of us chose a themed issue of Frew. And Mikael with 1909, which was the Femme Fatale issue, was the only singular issue that wasn't chosen as the best Frew issue. So I think and Dan will be able to tell us soon, but just judging by the 6 of us experts, themed issues work.
Yep, and look, spoilers: 4 of the top 6 are themed issues in the results. Wow. So there you go. So to go through those, and we've been going through in reverse order. So in 10th place, we actually had a 4-way tie for 10th place, and probably reflected by the fact that the numbers were so strong for the specials. Some of the other ones didn't get great numbers, and so easier to tie, I suppose. In 10th place, with receiving 6.1% of the vote, was issue 1912, which is the Phantom Goes to Hell part of the Bella Epoch, and it also featured the second part of Scourge of the Air Pirates. 1914, which was the first part of Death in the East End. 1926, which was Kit and the Pirates and the third part of Wolves in London. And issue 1927, The Island, and the first part of Golden Queen, all finished, as I say, in that tie for 10th place. In 9th, we had the graphic novel, The Ghost and the Monster, which was... it wasn't on my list, and I'm probably surprised it made the top 10, to be honest. It wasn't one of my favourites, but anyway. Femme Fatale featured heavily amongst our group, or reasonably heavily amongst our group. Femme Fatale is a favourite story, I think, I remember. But in terms of that translating to it being someone's favourite issue, it finished in 8th place with 8.7% of the vote. Issue 1917, another of the Bella Epoch series, Beneath the Streets of Paris, and the issue with Heloise Part 1, finished in 7th place on 10.5. The first of the specials that we were talking about is in issue 1920. Is in position 6. That is issue 1920. The Flame special received 13.2% of the vote. The Christmas special, and again, maybe it's the recency bias, but maybe people just love it. Certainly, I voted for it, and a number of others did. Was in 5th, as I say, issue 1934. That's that collection of daily and newspaper stories from Tony DePaul, Mike Manley, and Jeff Weigel. 15, nearly 16% of the vote. Position 4 is a standalone or a single issue, not a special. Issue 1919, Balloon for the Moon. Again, a Peter Anderson story from Paris, and also the second part of the issue with Heloise. So the cover's been popular as we went through. Peter Anderson's been popular as we've gone through. The issue with Heloise has been popular as we've gone through. So that's all come together to get 18.4% of the vote for issue 1919 to finish in 4th place. Our top 3, and if you've been paying attention, you'll know that in our top 3 we have 2 specials and 1 regular issue. In 3rd place was the 2022 annual, the themed Eastern Dark Stories, which included, of course, replica of issue number 32. 23.5% of our voters had that in their top 3. And interestingly, we've got a tie for first place. And I talked about big numbers for the specials and small numbers for the regular issues, but those big numbers have come together for the one of each of those to be in first place. So issue 1930, which was Matt Kime's The Manhunt, and the Matt Kime cover that I think was first as well in the favourite covers, and also featured Shane Foley's The Golden Queen Part 3. So that finished with 25.4% of the vote, and exactly the same percentage was the Masked Marvel special, featuring the Lee Falk story, the original, and Paul Mason's follow-up with Paul Mason's cover, which we've all raved about as well. So
I don't think there's any surprises there based on what we've been talking about for the last hour and a half.
Yeah.
Exactly what I was going to say. The Bella Epoch has been popular. That 6 individual stories, as has been pointed out to us, that has been distributed amongst the the year. It was published over probably a 4-month period, maybe.
Yeah, that'd be about right.
Has been very popular. And then when Dudley or Frew has done let's get female artists to do the covers, which has been like another theme, has also been very popular as well. So it's, and then again, what we talked about before is the themed issues. So, it's interesting. Even the graphic novel, which we've said is not our favourite, that still cracked the top 10 amongst the voters. And it's, what was it? It was 7%. So, look, it's not high when you compare it to 25.4, which is what number one got, but still almost 1 out of 10 voted that as their favourite, or one of their favourite issues of the year. So that still shows that a graphic novel is still worth doing.
Absolutely.
Okay, moving on to the best merchandise, which was new in 20. I'm going to assume they're supposed to say 2022 there, Jim. Just make a quick change to the run sheet. Okay, so there's licensed and there's unlicensed. So starting off with the licensed merch, we have Boss Fight Studio Wave 1 and 1.5 and the hero figure, as well as the PVC figurines. We have the NECA Original Superheroes figurine. We have the Perth Mint coin. We have the Melon Diary, the calendar, and the print. We have the Frew Paul Mason print, the Folio 8 set. We have the Frew show bags, the Phantom World cards, and the Generation cards, and the uncut sheet. We have the Games by Lyck expansion pack, the Terror Marathon, and we have the Jean-Yves Mitten deluxe edition from France. In unlicensed merch, we have the Cy Barry prints, we have Sal Voluto and Eugenio print sets. Which we
still have a couple of, if anyone's interested in those.
John Hufstrom prints and Mr. Walker jacket, prints from artists at conventions. So for my mind, how many could we pick? I think I'll pick 2. I've picked the action figures. That's a good way of picking about a dozen.
Just
saying the action figures. Also, I've been crying out for these for the last couple of years. The action figures. If I was going to pick one action figure, I'll go for the big NECA original superheroes.
Yep.
If I had to pick one. And I've also picked the Terra Maritan expansion pack, which, funnily enough, Mikael has picked as well as his best merchandise for 2022.
He does declare his bias with the little emoji.
So there's a big smiley face emoji there. Ankit has gone for the NECA Phantom. He's gone for Boss Fight Studio and for the expansion pack in the card game. Duncan has gone for the Jean-Yves Mitten Deluxe Edition. He's also gone for the Heart of Darkness coffee table book, which wasn't on the list there, Jim. Oh, Jim's just kind of shrugged his shoulders and...
Look, the reason, because I actually thought, why did I include the John Vales Mitten Deluxe Edition? But there was prints and the box that also came with it. So I've kind of snuck that in the merchandise. Yeah. Look, the Heart of Darkness coffee table book is good. I reckon, just quickly while we're talking about that, I don't think I've actually mentioned it. This year we have possibly seen 3 of maybe the top 3, maybe the top 5, maybe the top 10, but 3 of the top ever Phantom publication books ever. We've got the John Vales Mitten Deluxe Edition, the Heart of Darkness one, and then probably also the Terror of the Regal Terror of the Python one as well. Those 3 will probably be easily the top 10, top 20 best Phantom published collected works, books, comics ever. And we saw 3 of them in 2022. So that's probably worth making mention, which I don't think we have in our notes anywhere in all these pages.
Rightio.
Well, that's
And
because they're. I certainly haven't got deep enough pockets to bring those home.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
John Claude Van, the Gene views, or the Mitten. I'm just going to call it the Mitten book.
the mitten.
That's like probably I think it was about 180 plus postage, and I had to get it from France to Melbourne back to WA. So it was close to about $200 at the end of the day, but it was worth it.
And Duncan's third favorite bit of merchandise was the NECA OG Phantom figure. Dan, what are your top three?
Been a big advocate for Phantom figures for a long time, and to have so many of them land in our laps this year, well, the last 18 months, I suppose, has been just sensational. Like you, I'm not really going to split the beer. No, like you, I probably would if I had to throw one of them. If I could only keep one, it'd be the NECA figure, the original Superheroes one. But I do love my Little Boss Fight Studios ones as well. I'm going to give a shout out to the Generation cards just because I was one of the last people to fill this in and no one else had mentioned it. I really like the Generation cards, and if you want to throw in the Phantom's World cards that Frew did as well, it's great to see those sorts of things being thrown in the mix of things that we can pick up at a more budget end. And I do have the uncut sheet framed up on the wall, and I really like the foil look and the way that catches the sun down in my Phantom Skull Cave. And also only because I just thought as you read through the list of what was available, I'd forgotten about the Jan Hofstrom Mr. Walker jacket. And I think that was like $2,500 or something for a trench coat in either red or blue, the same as Mr. Walker. I would have loved to have the pockets to be able to bring that home and wear it around.
As if you need it in Queensland.
We have moments here in Toowoomba, but I just thought that was what a unique, one of a kind item. Never seen anything like that before. So
Yeah,
I forgot about the Generation cards, and I shouldn't have, because that was probably the only original artwork that I picked up this year was the Phantom number 19 with Jeff Weigel.
Can I just make mention that I did have the Frew cards on mine before. So I've chosen the Frew cards.
I was scanning for the word Generation, so there you go.
So of course you've got the Phantom World ones, and you've also got the Generation cards. Look, I have minor issues with both of them, but I love, like what you made mention, is that they're a good price. And look, who doesn't love trading cards? We all grew up in the 90s when trading cards were big. My kids are now starting to get into trading cards with Pokemon, and they want to collect the footy ones this year as well. So it's great to have it. I've got a friend who started collecting cards again, and he's picked up all the Phantom ones and stuff like that. I've had requests from Sweden, Brazil, and I think there was one other place as well who was after the Frew cards as well, as part of trades and gifts and stuff like that as well. So, those cards have been sought after by outside of Australia as well. I'm going to go the Boss Fights Hero edition, which is the one with the Grey Phantom and Hero figurine. If I had to choose one, it would be that one. Now, I want to say the PVC figurines, but I haven't got them yet. My normal person who I get them from isn't getting them in, so I have to now find a place to get them. And I don't know, we might just, seeing they became available like last week of December, we might just have to include them for 2023. But I'm looking forward to getting the box, opening the blind bags. I just like the feeling I got when we got the Frew trading cards in the packets, opening the box, going through it. And we started doing it at Supernova, and there was probably 4 or 5 of us. We're actually at a panel, and we're all lining and we're all like opening it, and we're going, "Yeah, I got this card. Oh, I got the Cyberry card," and and we're all taking photos and we're doing swaps and stuff like that. I reckon that nostalgia feel will be kind of like that of the PVC figurines. Of course, we're all going to buy the box, and we're not going to buy the one. When we were kids, you would see the box at the newsagent. You can only buy one at a time, so it's not going to have that same feel. But the feeling of opening it, maybe opening it with the kids and getting excited and stuff like that, I think will be quite exciting for a lot of people.
I reckon that's probably a good idea. Pick that up at about, if you can get it at the start of December, use it as a bit of an advent calendar for yourself. You get to open one PVC figure a day.
I won't be keeping my box closed for another 11 months. All right, so look, we're kind of wrapping up. We've done all the comics and covers and stories and stuff. So now we're just doing a bit of overall overview look. So thank you for sticking with us. So now, first of all, we're going to do our best Chronicle Chamber moment, a little bit of self-indulgence. So myself would be the Phantom Bible. That's been a bit of a project, a labour of love. Received a lot of good commentary from creators, from fans, even publishers as well. Received some negative stuff as well, but that was to be expected. And then the other thing that we worked on was the new website design as well. That was a bit of fun as well. Getting my hands dirty in a bit of code and stuff like that as well. So that were probably two of my favourite Chronicle Chamber moments. Talking to Mikael, his was when he hosted the interview with Robert Amann about all things Sweden. Ankit, which is the still to be unpublished podcast with Cy and David Barry. That's still to come out. Now, in this podcast, Cy actually talks about his comics being published by Indradrill. And he's got some interesting comments in that podcast, which should be interesting when that hit the airways. And his other one was the Pity Anderson podcast as well. In talking to Duncan, his was the sketch off for Ukraine, which he hosted. But he said that he's been told that the host was a bit of a hog. And that guy has his fingers in more pies than a leper in a baking contest. Look, that was another good podcast, doing that whole Ukraine fundraising as well. Just got an email from Leonard Moberg recently, who followed up and was quite proud of the fact of how much we were able to donate and raise to the Ukraine mission as well. So that was a good choice, Duncan. Stephen, what about yourself?
As always, one of my favourite things about Chronicle Chamber is being able to interview creators, getting to talk with the people who create the stories. I love that about this. So I put that as my best Chronicle Chamber moment whenever we get to talk with creators. I've also got another one, but we can't mention it at the moment. I'm really looking forward to when we can mention that one.
Yes.
Because I'm buzzing.
Yes. Won't say any more. Quick, Dan, take over before one of us slips.
Blabs, yeah. Look, I really enjoyed watching the Fan and Bible come together and contributing in a very, very small way, but seeing the power of work that you did on that German and what you contributed to the Phantom universe in that regard, and you very humble about it, and would like to let others take some credit, but to instigate it and to put the framework together, and then to encourage people to contribute and to create what has been such a sensational resource. I'm very proud to be part of Chronicle Chamber while that was coming together, and I think that's going to be a wonderful resource going forward. I probably was less involved in Chronicle Chamber this year than I probably would have liked, with work and life and the universe and all the rest of it. And so again, recency bias. I know I've said that a few times, but I really enjoyed just before Christmas doing some writing for me for a change, and putting that Christmas cover post together, doing a bit of research and going back through all of the old Christmas covers that different publishers had published from around the world. Of course, the nationalists in me was fiercely proud that that Frew had the first ever Christmas cover, but then to discover that they were actually 40 years or 60 years, 50 years, 60 years after the first couple were produced in Brazil. That was a real paying for the nostalgia of Frew not getting it, but real pride that that sort of stuff had been uncovered, and that was thanks to people who read the article and wanted to get involved. So again, that the fandom community that comes around some of the stuff that we do, it's great to be part of that.
Yeah, definitely. No, it was interesting. I think you rewrote that article probably about 10 times and had to add stuff in. And
had to keep adding stuff in and footnotes here, and yeah, exactly. No, it was a lot of fun, and I know you threw a lot of images. You answered every question I had, and then, as I say, to actually publish the story and think, right, that's done, and have people get in touch and go, but hang on, what about this? And you're like, oh yeah. So no, it was really good.
Okay. Moving on to our overall reflection on 2022. Now, this is Frew, this is well by publishers, and just general, really. For my mind, it's been a solid year. There's always been something new. I think we mentioned before, was it once every week and a half there's a new story? Or was it one every 1.5 weeks there's a brand new story that hasn't been released?
Yeah.
But 2 a week of issues. So that's a jam-packed year. That's a great year of lots of Phantom in the world. But then my next point is more Frew related, I guess. It felt like there was less stories than previous years, but the quality just keeps getting better in my mind. I think the Frew crew have been doing a phenomenal job. Dudley, Glenn, and don't forget the man with the money, Renee, and everyone who works for Frew. Well done for doing what you do. But it hasn't all been good news, and where Dan was, a bit of self-indulgent, saying about the Christmas cover post, and that being one of the best Chronicle Chamber moments. My big article for Chronicle Chamber this year was about the news call taking the comic strips out of the newspaper. So I've really enjoyed, actually writing an in-depth story or article for Chronicle Chamber, but unfortunately the news wasn't all that good. And I'm really disappointed with News Call and other newspapers cancelling their comics pages. And I don't think I've read a newspaper since. I think I've read one of the local rag that we have here, and I was very happy when I turned to when I was flicking through it, they've still got a comics page and the Phantom was on it. Their subscription's a bit too high for my liking, so I'm probably not going to get it. But I was still quite happy that the Phantom is still appearing in newspapers. Even though I haven't been reading newspapers since, I've been probably reading more strips than I have before, thanks to Comics Kingdom and also Go Comics website. After the newspapers took the strips out of their papers, I had to go and find where the strips were. So I went to Comics Kingdom and I went to Go Comics, and they take up my time in the morning while I'm eating my breakfast, and I read through the strips, and I read through, like I said, Manly's Judge Parker. I go once a family read. Terry Beatty, he's got the Rex Morgan. I've been reading Rex Morgan, and I've found more comedy type strips, and as well as adventure ones and drama ones, and it's just been good. It's a great way to start the day, I think, is just to sit down and read some comic strips. And I'll put the Phantom last, because we always save the best to last, so I always read him last. Ankit, his overall reflection on 2022, it's probably more of a want. He wants more coloured collection trades in English, please. So probably his request for 2023. Duncan, he's in overall there's increased access to Indian, German and Norwegian publications via resellers. Can someone please organise this for Mythos? Well, if we can get someone to read Mythos and tell us about it, that'd be great too. Support, something else he's liked, supporting Chronicle Chamber with Phantom Bible development and using it as a reference to help him find stories and story arcs and inconsistencies in the canon. And this is, I think we can all take something from this. Frew's boundless patience, tolerance, and custodianship of the character, the stories, and access to the Phantom in Australia. The stewardship demonstrated by Dudley Hogarth and Glenn Ford is as tireless as it is unsung. Everyone listening to this podcast, write a quick email to dudley@frewpublications.com with a line expressing what their work means to you as a reader. And if you're listening to this podcast, especially at the 2-hour 20 mark, which
I don't think
far
we're
off.
quite there yet.
I'm looking at if we started at 10, it's now 12:10. We're not quite at 12:20, 2-hour 20. You're a fan of Tragic just like the rest of us. So show Dudley and Glenn they are appreciated, because without those two very real humans, there's no pretend stories about a guy chasing pirates in tights. Well said, Duncan. And I made sure I read that verbatim. I didn't want to summarize that because I thought that was very well written. Thank you, Duncan. Germ, your overall reflection on 2022.
Okay, so in doing it, the thing that probably stood out most to me was the news stories. Where was it? How many, sorry?
I think it was 30, up from 21, 22 the previous year.
Yeah, that's why I said one every week and a half.
Yeah, exactly. So that's huge. A big increase of news stories so that's probably the thing that I kind of like. Oh wow. Also the other thing was there was actually a fair bit of new products this year with the figurines coming out of the US. Frew produced quite a lot of new products as well. And then we had the melon stuff, we had the Perth coin, we got the mug coming out in a couple of months as well. There's actually stuff to buy, not just comics as well. So that was exciting. And then seeing Germany starting and smashing it out of the park with Zubistan, their brilliant covers and nice mix of stories, and then Wick's publications selling out of their comics. I kind of worry sometimes that the Phantom's, dying, but to see a country starting with a bang and producing, so they would have produced, I think they produced 7 comics this year, so that's more than one every 2 months. And then there would have been, probably 12, 15 stories out of those as well. It's really good. And then, of course, the newspaper stopped, what we've talked about as well. I want to look. It's negative that we're seeing newspapers stop publishing the comic in their newspapers. But I also want to think that in trying to look at the positives of it, it's raised a potential problem with a lot of fans, and so a lot of fans are now aware of it. And so I think that could be trying to turn the negative into a positive, that maybe we aren't going to be seeing the demise of the Phantom as much because fans are causing a little bit of noise about that cancellation. So, just trying to look at a possible positive about that negative story. Dan?
Yeah, I think my overall reflections much along the same lines there. I was just actually scanning back through last year's run sheet to see. I feel like I predicted the end of the newspaper strip either in one of these podcasts or the last year.
You did.
Or not the end of the strip, but the end of it being published in papers. And that is coming to, but what you say is right. I think that whether it's that has given a bit of momentum, but I do think there's a bit of groundswell around the Phantom at the moment. It just feels like whether it's the action figures coming out, a variety, extra countries publishing the Phantom and all these extra new stories coming out, there does feel like there's a bit of a groundswell, and it wouldn't surprise me. I know we've got our predictions for 2023 shortly, but it wouldn't surprise me if there's some, whether there's a movie or a TV series in the works that's it just feels like something brewing. Eh?
Yeah, you just had to try and get it in first, eh?
What's that?
That's his big thing for the.
Sorry.
Big thing
No,
for
look,
2023.
I don't necessarily know if that's coming. Yeah, but sorry, no, I just meant that there is this groundswell it just feels like there's the vibe, talking about the vibe. So anyway, the action figures were huge for me this year. I was really looking forward to those coming out for a long time, and to have those little toys that I've mentioned so many times on the podcast. And again, everything that Duncan said about Frew, they are amazing, and more power to them, and may they last forever, this team. So that I guess those lead to the next, and the last section is, what do you think, if you had wanted to make a big call about what's going to happen in 2023, what do you think is going to happen? So I have spent most of the podcast brewing on that, and what I think is the could be the big news of 2023 is that my 13-year-old son is going to take my place on the podcast, because he had got a subscription of Phantom comics for Christmas. And it started with the Christmas annual, and then he received, I don't know what issued 1935, I guess it must be. We both received that on the same day. He opened it and read it, and has asked me every day since, "Have you read it, Dad, yet? Can we talk about it?" He's dead keen to talk about the comic, and I haven't had the time. Well, I haven't prioritized reading it yet. So, so that's my big tip for going forward, is he's going to take over my spot here. Ankit has predicted that Phantom 2040 is going to return in comic book format. Interesting one from Ankit there. Wonder if that is the Hermes Press collection that he's looking for of the old comic books, or perhaps
I reckon he's going new. I reckon he's going new stories.
Yeah, that would be cool if it happened, especially since now we're only 18 years away from 2040.
You know whose art I would like to see in a style of Lauren Marshall with her cover. I reckon like that style with the Phantom 2040, I reckon could work.
Yeah, no, it would. Duncan has said that he'd like to see he sees the Defenders of the Earth animated series becoming available on one of the streaming platforms, which would be pretty cool. You've got to work pretty hard at the moment to find that on YouTube or whatever. So to see that on a streaming network, make it a bit more mainstream would be cool. He would also. Is he talking about
a new one?
He's talking about a new series.
He's talking about a new. Here I am stuck in the past with Ankit and Duncan, but they're talking about new stuff. Duncan's actually mapped it all out. He wants it directed by the dude who wrote the unpublished script, with the animation art. Do you remember who that was? We did talk to him, didn't we?
Yeah.
Anyway, he wants it directed by someone who's worked on it before. Tim Boyle, yes. Yeah, that's right. He wants animation art direction from Glenn Ford, Paul Mason, and James Brower. He sees the voice actors including Nathan Fillion, Phil Lamar, Tara Strong, and Mindy Kaling, with a cameo by Billy Zane as an ancestor of the Phantom. So that's Duncan's got some connections in the in the film world. So who knows?
So Nathan Fillion, he's the guy who did, was it Firefly and Castle?
Yep.
I've got no
That's
idea.
him. There's also Halo 5, I think. It's in Guardians. He plays one of the Spartans there.
I don't know the others, to be honest.
Well, Jim, I want you to put the faces of those people up on the screen for people on the YouTube so that they can see who they are.
Names are familiar, except for Mindy. I'm not sure who Mindy is.
Mindy Kaling, isn't she? I think she's from The Office.
Okay.
I think. I could be completely wrong.
But we'll have photos of them up.
Yeah, very good.
And Duncan's like, man, I should have gone on because Dan just screwed that up totally.
Almost certainly. Because I keep thinking of reprints of old stuff.
No. We've done the old. Now we're talking about big news of 2023. Big stuff.
Absolutely right. Well, what would you have as your big stuff of 2023, Steve?
I'd love to see an Australian-produced clothing line that is widely available and looks awesome. If we're talking about this groundswell and things, a bit of movement happening around the Phantom, we've got toys now which are excellent, but still a little bit pricey. You've got to go to certain shops to get them. If we're going to have, T-shirts, socks, the funky socks are everywhere. Why can't we have Phantom socks again? Why can't we have Phantom boxer shorts again?
And then we wouldn't mind getting socks and jocks for Christmas and for our birthday.
Yeah. So, but not just socks and jocks and all that, but t-shirts, cool, good quality,
Hoodie.
Australian, yeah, hood. Oh, I need a Phantom hoodie, and proper license stuff. You can go into Redbubble or whatever and do all that sort of stuff. But get some proper license stuff. That would be awesome. Or at the very least, the good KFS tees are made available in Australia at a decent price.
That's
Yeah.
There's a lot of not good KFSTs as well, so I'm glad you clarified that.
Yeah, the good ones.
Use the old style guides, not this new one.
Okay, so my big news of 2023 is going to be we're going to get a TV show announcement.
I would love
I've
that.
got my crystal ball. I'm hoping, I'm dreaming. I got all my fingers crossed. But for me, the big news of 2023 is going to be that we're going to have a TV show. It could be animated, like Duncan said, with the Defenders of the Earth, which then allows Mandrake and Flash, and or it could be live action. But that's my big news of 2023.
If that's what this groundswell is leading to, that's very exciting because coming with that surely is the Supernova circuit and t-shirts and merch and all that good stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to be able to go into Zing or whatever and see these. Yeah, how good would
that be?
Yeah, I was actually in Zing on, was it Boxing Day? I don't know, a day or two before Christmas, and looking at presents for my girls and stuff, and there's Pokemon, there's all this top stuff, and I thought, Zing, sometimes they do the Phantom. I looked around, no Phantom there, but you're right. To be able to go to a shop like that and spend more money than my kids, something would be nice. Alrighty-o. So look, that was a bit of fun. We've finished. I reckon it's going to be pretty much dead on 2 hours. So thank you for listening to us. Now there is going to be a prize draw for the survey entries to follow. That's going to be in an article which will be published a day or two after this has been published. So this podcast should be published on the 9th. So of the week of the 9th, an article with deep analysis by the team and stats for those who like stats and all that will be able to be digested. Now, if you have any ideas or creators or ideas of podcasts you would like to be discussed or interviewed, please contact us. Our website is chroniclechamber.com. Our email address is chroniclechamber@gmail.com. Now, if you want to be notified of new articles, ensure you either follow us on our social or sign up with your email address on our website, and you'll be emailed as soon as something new is posted on our website. Sometimes you may miss it on social media, but if you sign up, you will get it. You will be spammed every time we email you something. Now, episode 241, Stephen kind of hinted at this. Now, unless there's anything that we're not aware of at the time of recording, episode 241 is going to be super special and a game changer. Now, Patreons, you will get access to this podcast one day earlier than everyone else. So if you're not a Patreon and you're umming and ahhing, that is a reason to get on there because you will be psyched.
This is the real big news. Like everything else was that was a bit of fun. This is huge. This is massive.
Okay, Steve, can you please mute yourself in case you say anything more?
I won't say anything. I am the vault.
But no, it is. The three of us were like giddy little schoolgirls when we got this news about this. Okay, now, if you are like us, just making mention of this, if you are like us and you use Phantom Wiki for your research in order to hunt down that comic that you are trying to find, you can help them out by donating funds for the yearly fee for hosting. Now, their yearly hosting fee is 5,000 krona, which is in Swedish currency, which is roughly 750 Australian or 600 US or 500 euros. So it's a bit of money. Now, what they have done is you can download a free calendar and then you can donate some money as a thank you for the calendar. So you're getting something for your donation. Now, if you want to find out more about that, you can go to our website or you can go to fantomwiki.org for more information. Of course, you can subscribe to us via YouTube or through your favorite podcast apps, including iTunes or Spotify. Thank you for listening. Thank you for, sticking with us for 2 hours. Make sure you let us know on social media what your favorites are, or send us an email as well. Or if you're on YouTube, give us some comments down below. Love to hear from you. Love to hear whether you agree or disagree with the 6 of us. Thank you to Ankit, Duncan, and Mikael for your opinions and comments that you have given us. Steve, Dan, thank you for 2022. Look forward to catching up with you more regularly for 2023, and hopefully our big predictions come true. And in the meantime, thank you and happy Fantoming.
Happy Fantoming, one and all.
Happy Fantoming, everyone. And if you're listening to this, write that email to Dudley. Duncan wants you to.
Absolutely. As long as it's nice stuff, don't give me that.
Yeah, well, if you persisted this much, you can spend 5 minutes writing a nice email to Dudley.
All my sons will follow me, so evildoers will believe that this man cannot die. The Phantom, the ghost who walks. The Phantom, enemies beware. The Phantom's always there, but you won't find the Phantom. He finds you.